Hi, I was excited recently to watch Blonde, the new film by Andrew Dominik, based on the novel by Joyce Carol Oates and loosely based on the life of Marilyn Monroe. It's effectively the third part of a trilogy of films by Dominik covering the nature of fame, people who have found fame for reasons that they did not choose or the consequences of fame. His first two films in that area were Chopper, the story of Mark Chopper Reed, a notorious Australian outlaw, and follow that up with the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, one of the best films of the first decade of this century. It's been 10 years since his last film, Killing Me Softly, based on the Friends of Eddie Coyle. So I was very excited to see what he was going to bring to this quite different story, not a crime story, a female protagonist, and something which has had a lot of pre publicity about its length, its far more adult tone, being classified as NC-17, the first major release in that category for some years, and its apparent liberties with uh, Monroe's life story. Well, I should start by saying that referring to it as being the story of Marilyn Monroe is untrue, because it's the story of Norma Jeane Baker. Marilyn Monroe is shown in the film as being a cloak, a mask that she wears as part of her work as an actor. And the film is a sensitive and compassionate portrait of an extremely troubled woman. I did not find it to be sexist or misogynist. I did not find it to be exploitative. I found it to be unvarnished, but nevertheless compassionate. We start from Norma Jean at a very young age suffering abuse from the hands of her mentally ill mother and then being forced to go and stay in an orphanage. We jump forward to her becoming a successful model and then actor, having taken on the persona of Marilyn Monroe. But the persona for her is a trap. It prevents her from being her true self. We see that she's, on other occasions, pursuing serious acting. She reads Dostoevsky and has a fascination with Russian literature. Um, she is an artistic, intelligent person, but because of her beauty, because of society at the time, and because of the attitudes of exploitative men, she is regarded as nothing more than a sex object. Particularly, the issue is the relationship with her absent father. She never knew who her father was. Her mother pointed to a picture and said, "That is your father." And we're never given any indication of who that person is. But her pursuit of a father figure, a role model, someone who she could look up to, someone who would care for her and respect her, followed her entire life through her marriages to Joe DiMaggio, which ends with domestic abuse, with Arthur Miller, where the two were more on the same level. But both were intellectuals, both appreciated fine things, but their marriage fell apart after an accident led to Baker having a miscarriage. Eventually, we know how the story ends, of course, and there is a reason given within the context of the story for her death. But the film is interested in stripping away the mythology of Marilyn Monroe, the glamour, the Instagram version of her life, as Dominik described it. Instead, we see a troubled, mentally struggling, if not mentally ill, young woman who was brutalized and mistreated by society and the men around her. It's very hard to show that in a story without showing that brutalization. You have to have some of that so that you understand how bad it was. And I don't think that the exploitation that people have described is even there. I don't think it's a sexist film. I think it's positive towards Monroe. It's not showing her life to be an unending stream of pain, because there are many times that show her to be happy, to be supported. She is part of a staged reading of a play um, where she first meets Miller, and Miller is initially dismissive of her presence, but keeps his thoughts to himself. But then we jump to the end of the production, and Monroe is being lauded by the other actors, by the the cognoscenti and intelligentsia in the audience. They see that she is a genuine talent, that she is someone with a real gift. Um, so I think ideas that she's always in pain and the film doesn't give her her due, those are nonsense. The film is supportive and compassionate, and it's saying, wasn't it awful what this woman had to deal with and how everything wound up failing her? Even those who wanted to help ultimately fell away. Ana de Armas' performance as Baker / Monroe is revelatory. She's extraordinary in the role. It has been mentioned that her accent is less than perfect at times, and that's true, but she embodies the character, the persona of Monroe and the personality of Baker so perfectly and so truthfully that complaining about her accent is a mere detail. No one says that Dick Van Dyke is bad in Mary Poppins because his accent is bad. There are numerous supporting performances that are highly impressive. I thought Bobby Cannavale and Adrien Brody as DiMaggio and Miller were very fine. Julianne Nicholson has a few short scenes as Baker's mother and is appropriately distant and unnerving. But it's the stars of the film are de Armas and Dominik. His direction is its stream of consciousness. We see the picture changes frame shape. We jump between color and black and white. We have dream sequences, fantasy sequences. The film is about showing what the world was like, seen from Baker's point of view. So we we are within her inner monologue. So a scene, for example, where she has a conversation or an imagined monologue from her unborn child, um, with the fetus begging her not to be aborted. That was not, I think, any kind of anti-abortion tract. I think that's Monroe projecting her own, or Baker. It's it's a complex mistake. Baker projecting her own fears and concerns onto the child she's carrying. It's a complex and difficult situation. Dominik has made few friends with some of his comments in interviews, stating that he feels very little about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, for example, stating that it's a film about well-dressed whores. I haven't seen Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I did read a synopsis, and I don't think his comment is without merit. He has said in interviews, however, that he does love Some Like It Hot, the production of which we see in the film, and which shows Monroe and Baker at the end of her tether, um, clearly struggling with addiction issues, psychological issues, and no one cares because they see only the image. They see only what they can get out of her, what they can get her to do, what they can force her to do, and have absolutely no concern about her as a person. I found it thoroughly engaging, absolutely fascinating, um, brilliantly directed as this stream of consciousness kaleidoscope of the inside of Baker's mind. De Armas' performance is the best of the year. I can't imagine seeing a better performance this year, um, in all honesty, and the Oscar is hers to lose. Um, the film has been highly controversial, as I've said, but it is a remarkable visionary piece of work. It is difficult, it is complex, it overturns sacred work about or sacred thoughts about the glamour of old Hollywood, but it does so in a thoughtful and compassionate and intelligent way. It's my favorite film of the year so far.